In today's episode, Lauren asks, how should people track the progress and success of their marketing campaigns? Boy, that's an open-ended question, isn't it? The short answer is you need software at each stage of the customer journey appropriate to your business that can measure what's going on, right? So if you are selling things to people, you probably need some kind of customer relationship management software, CRM. If you are marketing to people individually and want to understand sort of personally identifying marketing performance, marketing automation is how you're going to do that. If you are marketing to people in aggregate, particularly digitally, web analytics software is going to be where you're going to measure that. And then above that are individual channel systems like your Facebook ads or your Twitter ads or your YouTube stats. All those things sort of fit at the top of the funnel or the beginning of the customer's journey. How you track that, it depends on your level of sophistication and how comfortable you are with numbers, right? So sort of the baseline is at each stage of the customer journey where you have discrete behaviors, awareness, consideration, evaluation, and purchase, etc. You should have some kind of KPI, something that says, like, if this number goes the wrong way, we're going out of business, right? So if you have a podcast and your podcast subscription numbers, right, go to zero, guess what? Your podcast is done, right? It's no listeners means no podcast. So that would be an example of a KPI. Things like, duration of listen or things like that. Those are not numbers that are as critical as like just nobody's listening to the show anymore. So at a bare minimum for each stage of your customer journey, you need a KPI and possibly some supporting metrics in the relevant system at that stage of the customer journey, and then track the fallout among different systems and stages, right? So if you have awareness and maybe you have search traffic come to your website, you have consideration and evaluation, people trying to understand, which podcast should they listen to. And then you have purchase, which in this case could be purchasing something from your business or just the act of subscribing to your show. Maybe that's what you would consider a purchase because your real business model is selling advertising. If that's the case, then you would use the attribution modeling built into the appropriate system at the appropriate stage of the journey to understand what worked, what was driving people to take the actions you wanted them to take that led to the outcome that you care about. That's the base level. The more advanced answer is using data science and maybe some machine learning software to build a really big table of all of your metrics and then isolate one key outcome, one really big KPI, something that is sort of make or break. And then you build a multiple regression analysis and say, okay, of all of the potential variables we have here, of all the data we have, which ones alone or in combination have the strongest mathematical relationship to the outcome we care about, which presumably is a revenue number of some kind for most marketers. And once you do that, you have sort of an understanding of the variable importance, right? Maybe Twitter followers matters. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe podcast listeners matters. Maybe it doesn't. You won't know until you do that math, until you do that analysis. And then once you've done that analysis, then you can start seeing, okay, these are the channels that statistically likely contributed most to the outcome we care about. And once you have that, you can start building testing plans and say, okay, well, maybe Twitter followers really is the thing for our business. So what happens if we double our Twitter followers? Do we see a commensurate increase, a doubling of the outcome we care about, leads or sales or whatever? If you double the number of Twitter followers you have and the number of leads you get doesn't double accordingly, then you know that there was just a correlation there and not a causation, right? You ran a test and the test showed that there wasn't a causal relationship between the two. That's the more advanced way to track the progress and success of your marketing campaigns, is to see, A, did something happen, and B, was there a causal relationship for it? There are other statistical techniques that are more niche that you can use to also hint at causality, but they require a bit more technical bloodiness than we're going to talk about right now. Once you've got all that data, then you have to assemble it into a story, right? Here's each stage of our customer journey. Here's the performance of each stage. Here's the performance and the fallout between each of these stages. And then you can say to your stakeholders, here's the stage that is we're losing the most people at, and that's what our focus is going to be for the next quarter, is mitigating the losses from this stage to that stage. That's how you make improvements to your marketing campaigns. That's how you improve overall what's going on and really demonstrate your value as a marketer. Because it's easy just to do a bunch of things and just hand somebody a report, but to be able to document and say, this is the root cause of our problems and here's how we're tackling it, shows a lot of value, a lot of initiative, a lot of cleverness, and something that stakeholders love to see. So that's the short, not particularly detailed answer into how you track the progress and success of marketing campaigns. A lot of it is based on having the right people or skills, right? The right processes, including good data and clean data, and the right platforms at each stage of the customer journey so that you can tell that story with data from step to step, stage to stage. If you don't have the right people, the right processes, the right platforms, it's very difficult to show not only the success of a marketing program or a marketing campaign, but also to show what isn't working and why. Right? It remains guesswork, and guessing is generally the least preferred solution. So, good question. We could spend a whole bunch of time talking about tracking across the customer journey, but I think that's a good starting point. Thanks for asking. If you like this video, go ahead and hit that subscribe button.